Okay, I
Okay.
think we're recording. Yes,
Yes,
it
we are.
says we're recording.
Yes,
Good. Okay. You can edit that out, right?
yes, yes. So let's wait for 5 seconds and then we start
Okay.
because I'm gonna cut. Hi everybody, I'm here with Leila Stuart from Canada. Hi Leila, how are you?
Good. Cold.
Good to see you. Cold, really cold, and we are really hot here in Brazil. Well, we're very happy to have you here with us. And I would love to share a little bit about your expertise. Today, we're going to talk about yoga therapy. And I think the first question will be, what is yoga therapy?
Okay, it's a huge answer, so I'll try and narrow it down. So it used to be that yoga was taught one-on-one. So that's how the tradition started in India. And so all yoga was individualized according to the person who was sitting in front of the teacher. So that's why Krishnamacharya gave very, very different teachings to Iyengar and Pattabhi Choi. Um, so so somehow yoga got to be the way it is now, which is sort of one size fits all. You go to a class, everyone does the same thing, and it doesn't really matter who I am as a student. I'm still expected to do what everybody else does. So yoga therapy is using the same tools of yoga, but only after getting to know the person, the student in front of me on all levels. So not just what's going on with them physically in terms of disease process or medical condition or pain, but also who is this person? Um, who are they in their emotional self, in their mental self? What are their what's their personality? What are their beliefs? Do they have a spiritual life? So all of those things become very important because they will guide what practices that I give to someone. So
Okay.
so somebody might come with, two people might come with this same digestive disorder. Say they've got irritable bowel syndrome or something. And but the practices that I give to person A and person B might be very different. But what we know now, and the rishis knew this thousands of years ago, is that everything affects everything. So
Mm-hmm.
that we can start with some people in the physical realm, and that would be the doorway for them to healing. For other people, it might be doing a meditation, or even doing a seva, a selfless service in the community. So I guess so that's one thing. So we know the person and we individualize the practice. And then the other thing is that it is for healing. So I mean, we're all suffering from something, but the specific intent of yoga therapy is to use the tools of yoga to either alleviate the suffering that someone is experiencing, or to change their relationship with the suffering so that somehow they can manage to be in their life with that suffering. For example, we can do yoga therapy with dying people, and they're still going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But they could possibly die more at peace, for example. So that's yoga therapy. And people who do yoga therapy will have specialized training. so not just in the yogic practices, but also um, in pathology. So you have to know what someone is suffering from and what are the usual treatments for that, and is this person on some medication, and how would that affect their experience of pain? And so all of those things become very important. Yeah. So there used to be all yoga was yoga therapy, and there was no distinction. But now, because of the way that yoga has gone in the world, we need a reminder that yoga is really about healing, and and healing means that we experience our own wholeness more. So that's the context. That yes, we might have MS or some other medical condition, but we're still whole people. Yeah, and we can keep that in the background of our condition all the time. Yeah.
So knowing that, I suppose the assessment will be different from the other kinds of yoga. How is the assessment in yoga therapy?
Yeah, well, some of it's the same depending on the skill set of the therapist. So, for example, I'm a massage therapist, and so I include a lot of the physical assessments that I would do with a massage therapy patient. So, so I would do a structural assessment. I might do some strength assessment. I want to see how they breathe. I want to see how they walk. But the added aspect with yoga therapy is that we work with the Koshik model. So the Koshik model comes from the ancient texts, the Upanishads, and it's a way of looking at us in our human condition. So the acknowledgement is that we have a physical body, we have an energy body, we have a mental body, we have an intellect or a mental emotional body, we have an intellectual body, and we have a spiritual body, and that all of those are illusions, and that they cover up our true self, which is the soul. So we do an assessment on all of those koshas. So for example, in the pranamaya, or the pranic energy layer, we would ask people, how's your sleep? What kind of diet do you have? How much do you get outside in nature? What do you have in your life that brings you energy? So I have beautiful paintings in my home. I listen to beautiful music. I don't watch horror movies. So because we put energy in to ourselves, and the quality of that energy can determine our experience. Or if someone is, we might, on the intellectual aspect, we want to know who that person is. So are they a very enthusiastic person? Are they a very stubborn person? Are they stuck in their habits? So then that would change how we would approach someone. Yeah, does that make sense? And also,
yes.
Each of those koshas, or layers of our being, they're considered to be different densities of consciousness, really. They all affect each other. So we know now from the research that our experience of pain, for example, can be influenced by our past experience, by our beliefs, by our expectations, by memories, by the MRI that we saw yesterday at the doctor's office. That all of those can be inputs into the brain, which then processes all of them and determines whether pain needs to be the output. So we're seeing now, with all of the great research that's being done, the confirmation of what the yoga tradition has been saying for thousands of years, that yes, your thoughts affect your pain. Your food affects your pain. Your food, you know, how you are in your body affects how you think, or what you feel, or what your perception is. So we look at yoga and yoga therapy, we look at the whole person. And so, yes, the physical assessment is very important, but it's those other aspects that can make the difference between somebody really healing and not healing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does integral anatomy fit into yoga therapy?
Okay, well, in yoga therapy, whoever the therapist is will determine the kinds of offerings or the kinds of practices that will be given. And because I am a lover of anatomy, and as you know, a lover of the whole fascial and biotensegrity paradigm, and because for myself, I'm a very tactile person. As a massage therapist, I love to, I love to touch and to feel. And so experiential anatomy is a way of bringing that awareness to people about their structure, and in a non-intellectual way. So I can show someone an anatomy book, or I can describe the kind of joint in the shoulder, but until they can feel it as a felt sense, as a direct experience, it won't enter into their the inputs that the nervous system processes in order to do a particular movement. So, for example, we have all these different structures in our body. We have joints, we have parts, we have fluids, we have organs, we have all the different systems, and most people have no idea what that feels like, or that, like, somebody might think their stomach, like I heard the other day somebody say, put their hand here and say that's their spleen, but it's not, and it's not. And so what I've found over the years is that when people can really understand and have a direct experience of a structure, then that changes their alignment, it changes their experience of that part, and it changes their movement of that part. And now there's, again, more research that backs that up. You can tell I love research.
Yeah.
Because what the research has been finding is that when we develop that interoceptive sense, or that I call it a kinesthetic intelligence, then that can actually change our experience of self, number one. It can change our structure, number two, or our structural, function. And also, we know now that when a part of, so that our sensory awareness is decreased whenever there's dysfunction. So when we can increase that sensory awareness, our function increases, the body feels safer, because there's this understanding about what's going on. And we know now that a feeling of safety can decrease pain. So it's all sort of the new research is tying in very well with what we know from the yoga tradition. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's one thing about experiential anatomy. And the other thing is that often the physical is the doorway to healing. So that
Yes.
when so we come with different levels of awareness, different ability to
Uh-huh.
and it is a skill and it can be taught. So we have, so I just happen to be born a person with good awareness, good body awareness, but I have taught many people to develop that awareness. And it seems that when an awareness of physical is cultivated, then that awareness is awareness, and it spills over into some of those other aspects. And
So we can
yeah,
we can say the experiential anatomy is a really good tool to increase our awareness.
our awareness, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely, on
Okay.
all levels. And
Uh-huh.
when we understand our structure and our the capabilities of the structure, but also the limitations of the structure, then we will tend not to move past into the danger zone. So if I really understand the structure of my shoulder joint, and that it's a good thing to imagine spaciousness in that joint throughout my whole movement. As soon as I start to feel, oh, there's no space there, then I'll stop there and I'll stay safer. So so it increases our sense of safety, our function. We have this incredible world inside of us of potential support. And we know now how important safety is in terms of not just working with trauma, not just working with pain, but even in our sense of connecting with other people. So we want to create a sense of support. And the more we can do that from our structure, from our fascia, from our bones, from our organs, from our fluids, then the safer we feel. And also, the more we know about ourselves, the more we understand about ourselves, it seems like the greater our self-compassion is, and the
Mm-hmm.
greater and the more embodied we become in our life. For example, somebody just said in class last week, every time we learn about a new part of our body, I feel like I'm getting more of myself back.
Mm-hmm.
That was her comment, and that's what it is. We become more of who we are, more embodied, and then we live in a different way. And that's what yoga therapy is all about: is how can we live in a harmonious way with ourselves, with others, and in the world.
Okay. So once we are more aware of a certain part of our body through the experiential anatomy, then comes the repatterning.
Yeah.
When does repatterning comes into the scenario?
Yeah, well, certainly you're correct. We have to have an awareness first. We have to have an understanding of how things work and where that part fits into the greater whole. And then comes the repatterning. And see what I see a lot of people doing. I often will check online and just see, well, what are people saying about how to work with this condition or that condition? And what I see is mostly gross movement. And what I understand as a massage therapist is that there are component movements within those gross movements. And you would understand this too. So not just component movements at the joint, but if the nervous system is doing what it always does with that movement, then you can't change anything. And so movement repatterning is breaking down that gross movement into the very small, precise parts of it that need to be in the gross movement in order to make it a connected, strong, integrated movement. So in movement repatterning, we break the movement down. We do it much more slowly, in a more subtle way, and with great awareness. And that starts to change the pattern in the brain, that whole neuromuscular pattern. So one of my teachers said, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got.
Yeah.
And so,
People like that.
yeah, just by changing. So for example, in one of the videos, initiating from this movement from the spine, if I can lead people through a whole set of inquiry so that they can feel their spinous processes, they can feel their transverse processes, and they can actually initiate movement from those parts of the spine, knowing that although each vertebra doesn't have much movement, collectively there's a lot of movement, and that movement initiated at any one part of the spine will then sequence into the rest of the spine. So if I ask someone to initiate spinal movement from the pelvis, it's very different than initiating movement from the thoracic spine or from the neck. But even more precisely, if I ask someone, and I've led them through the process of being able to do this, to do a side bend by imagining all of the transverse processes on one side moving together and then opening on the other side, then the movement becomes very core, it becomes very integrated and safe. So it's very different than just saying, okay, do a side bend to the right. So that movement repatterning is the step in creating safer movement and in creating awareness.
I'm sorry, I'm very sick today. I have this cough.
Oh dear.
Okay. So when we talk about repatterning, we can say that it will look really deep into refinement.
Yes, refinement.
Refining the movement. And that's really talking about fascia, because fascia is our maybe the most important sensorial organ that we have right now.
Absolutely. And so now we know that, and we know that fascia is pervasive, and we've got all of these free nerve endings that are sensory receptors. And so when we refine the movement, when we become very precise and efficient with our energy, with our effort, then we are activating those nerve endings. And so the sensory input to the brain is much more precise. So when, for example, when we're initiating movement from the transverse processes, we will be activating those sensory nerve endings in that area, as opposed to just doing a side bend, and we would be activating different sensory nerve endings. So yes, I think that that activating the fascia, the sensory aspect of the fascia is an extremely important part of movement repatterning, of yoga therapy, and of healing in general. Yeah.
And I totally agree with you when you say that people are very worried about the gross movement and they don't look into the micro movements. They kind of neglect these refinement movements that we really need and that are so important to bring up a whole movement, a whole healthy movement.
Yeah.
And
that also it involves taking gravity out of the picture usually. So
yeah.
we do a lot of practice on the floor in a non-weight bearing way, so that all the noise of the sensory reception is at its lowest level, and then we can feel those subtle things that are happening. Yeah. So and I know a lot of people don't want to be on the floor. You know, they want to be doing the big movements.
Yeah.
We can do those bigger movements, but only after we've, learned how to feel, and then we learn how to crawl, and then we learn how to walk, and then we learn how to run.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if we really want to change a pattern, we really need to learn deeply this small micro movements and be aware of this movement inside of our body, and then later on move to the big movement.
Yeah.
So that's very nice that you touched this subject, because I think this is very important for everybody to get aware of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we're changing the neuromuscular patterning, and just the whole process of interoception and mindfulness will actually change the structure of our brain, so that our perception is different, or our response is different. So that's what I mean by awareness is awareness is awareness. So we start with the physical, but then we become aware of, oh, I just said that in kind of a harsh way to that person. And then you can catch yourself and go, I'm sorry, can I do a take two on what I just said to you? Something like that. We become better people, I think.
Yeah, yes. We're more careful with words, with our movements, with our intentions. That's true.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's what yoga therapy makes us more self-compassionate, and kinder to other people, and more able to be present and to respond to the actual truth of the moment, rather than rely on our old patterns of reaction that come from our programming. Yeah, that's the big picture of yoga therapy. And yes, your back pain can decrease, your irritable bowel syndrome can do some healing, but the biggest thing is what happens to you in your own inner experience of yourself and others and the world.
Yeah. I think the biggest picture, the most important thing is that maybe yoga therapy is a great tool for you to get to know yourself really well.
Yeah.
And know how to take good care of yourself.
Yes. And so then if you have cancer, or if you have MS, or if you have cardiovascular disease or depression or whatever condition you have, you learn how to be with it, and you learn some tools that will help you to live with that.
Yeah. How to manage that.
How to manage that.
I think we have 3 more minutes left, and I would like to ask you one thing. Like, yoga therapy is something that you can do one by one, but you can also do in a group session, or it's more like one by one to one.
Yeah, both.
Both.
The difference being that even in a yoga therapy class, I will have looked at and I will have asked everyone in the class to fill out a medical history form, so I know what's going on with them, so that I can suggest adaptations or restrictions. So for example, if I know that someone has grade 3 spondylolisthesis, I'm not going to ask them to get down on their stomach on the floor with everyone else and do a back extension, unless I've got really good support. But mostly I'll probably get them to do that extension against the wall. So that's the difference. The great thing about doing one-on-one is that you really get to go deep with that person. And there's a co-creation that happens, because I know that this person lives in their own body. They're the boss of their own body, and they can then tell me, when I do this, this happens, and I can say, okay, then let's try it this way, or what if you changed your breath when you did that. So that's the real value of it.
Very good. Okay, Leila, thank you so much for the interview. It was very interesting, and to learn all about these important tools that we can have. I think it's a good invitation for everybody to get to learn themselves better. So we will continue to interview you to learn a little bit more about yoga therapy. So I hope to see you again.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
So now you can end the meeting, and please save it, and you can send me by WeTransfer.
Okay.
Okay, and they will add it.
Okay, so Dropbox works?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right.
Thank
bye.
you very much, Leila.
Okay, bye-bye. I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Throat lozenges, ginger tea.
Yeah, I've been taking this whole week.
Yeah.
It's helping.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
End meeting.